Welcome back to the Artefactors Union. I'm your host and foreman, Douglas Scoundrels. Today we are assembling the Down to Business box for both the Explorers and the Arcanists faction. This is a title box, so we have an alternative form of Anya Lycarayen, which is Anya Lycarayen Real Magnate, an alternative form of Best Girl Toni Ironsides, Toni Ironsides Union President, and three minions in the middle that are unnecessarily hot, the Drudges. That is our artwork. Renders on the back. Anya, considerably less aggressive, but more terrifying somehow. Our big boy, not Markiplier, and strong lady. And then Toni, in a suit. I take full credit for her being in a suit. This is my mini. Let's look at the sprues. Our masters are on their own individual sprue. Here's Anya with just a bunch of small pieces, but overall doesn't look like she's going to be too bad. Our three Drudges. 1, 2, 3, separated by the thicker piece of sprue. And then Toni with mechanical bits. Like the speaker thing she's standing on is going to be the majority of the assembly, it looks like. Okay, we'll start with Anya first. Let's look at her instructions and then go over our order. Okay, for Anya, grab E6 the body, and then we'll do both the feet. E3 is our left foot, and E4 is the right foot. There's just ever so slight curve on the inside of the foot. That way you can tell which is which. I don't think they really have too unique of a connection point, although there appears to be maybe something right there. After that, we'll do her left hand first. I think the right hand wraps over that, so E1 first, and then E2, and we'll finish with her head, E5. All right? Here is E6. Our feet are going to go, obviously, where feet should be going on a body. But E4, our left foot is going to be on the more forward one. You do see a bit of a dent in there, so I think this one is the one that actually has the slight tooth on the connection point. Yeah, let me just grab that and show you. Right there. Right, add that first. The seam looks good. Now we'll do E4, the right foot, which you can barely see it, but there is a connection point right there. Okay. The seam looks good. It barely fits into that little tiny slot, so if it's slightly out of place, who really cares? As long as the feet fit flat on the ground, now would be a good time to just gently press her down on a flat surface and make sure. She might not necessarily need to stand, but the feet are flat on the floor, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to connect her. Those look good. And sadly, it's hard to compare her to her render, because the render has her tilted ever so slightly this way. But they look like feet. They look like where feet are supposed to go, so we can move on. Let's do her left hand now. I forgot which one that was. E1, which is going to go in this hole right here. Okay, mine fit in pretty solidly, but I'm not sure if that's the appropriate angle or not. Very, very quickly, let's add E2 on the other side, because the fingers are supposed to be touching like that. It is. Just now that I remembered how frickin' difficult this was when I first assembled them. My cat is screaming. Alright, so, shut up, Wednesday. Shut up! Okay, so the real hard part is getting the fingers as close as possible to each other, and also aligning the left thumb, which is actually a part of the right hand bit. You can see that right there with where a thumb would attach on the left hand. Getting those two things is kind of difficult. You're going to need to do a lot of fudging, and it's very helpful to have a pokey stick and some tweezers if you got them. But there we go, and the arms are jammed in their sockets more or less where they're supposed to be, so I'm very happy with it. Now we can move on to her head, E5, and call her done. And there we are. Anya has a head. Now let's put her on a base. Anya Lycarayen Real Magnate is completed. Mini was relatively simple with the exception of her frickin' fingers. The feet not really having solid purchase on, especially the right foot, underneath her wasn't too bad, at least not nearly as bad as I remember it being. But really getting those fingers together and that left thumb aligned was the pain point, to be sure. Hopefully that doesn't continue with the rest of this box. Let's move on. Our drudges, we have them labeled A, B, and C, and we'll do them in that order. So, Drudge A first, we'll grab the body, A5, yes, that's what it's called, and then we will do the right arm, A1. We'll actually add the head next, A4, followed by the towel he's using to wipe his face, A3, and finish off with the left hand, A2, which is holding the towel. Now let's look at the instructions before we get started. Alright, here's A5. Now we do A1, the right arm, right in there. Nice and smooth connection. Now we can do the head, A4. Just jam it right in there. Also very easy connection. Next is going to be A3, the towel, which will connect up here on the top of his head as well as right here on the chest. And at least the part that connects to the chest is on the other side of the mini, right there. Okay, we've got a towel on. Last is going to be the, excuse me, left arm, A2. It'll connect here as well as right here with the fist. Okay. Is it done already? Let's put them on a base. Our first drudge is completed. I don't have a naming scheme for them. I'm just going to call them what I call them on the tabletop. This is not Markiplier. Really easy. Oh, this felt so good to put together because there was not anything difficult. All the bits were nice and chunky, and the connection point's solid. That's really all I have to say. We can move on. On to the second drudge now. Grab the body, B1. We'll do the left arm, B3. The right arm, B2. The head, B5. And then the bandana hair, B4. B1. Now B3, the left arm, the one that is not holding a pickaxe here. I believe she's resting her fist on her hip. And we B, there is in fact a very slightly noticeable connection point where the fist is on the hip. Now B2, our right arm, where the pickaxe is going to be resting across the shoulder. There it is. Pretty hard to mess that up as well. Now we'll do, oh goodness, B5, the head. Right on the neck stump there. Okay. Now before the bandana, on the back of the head. Alright. She's all done. Put her on her base too. Drudge number 2 is completed. We're going to call her Muscle Mommy, because that's what she is. The hardest part for her, it's really stretching it, but I guess getting the back of her head on top of the rest of the head, maybe. And you can probably just put those two bits together before you jam the head on the body. So really stretching for a pain point here. Let's move on. Our last drudge is also looking to be fairly easy. Hooray. We'll start with the main body, C4. Then we'll add the back, C3. And then the left leg, C5. After that, we'll do whatever's wrapped around his waist, the knot of that, C2. And then we can go and do the left arm, C6. And the right arm and bag, C1. So let's grab C4 and C3 first. C4, now we turn it around. C3 is on, seam is very nice. Now let's do C5, the left leg. Okay, we got the majority of the body done. Now we'll do C2, the knot to the thing he's wearing, shirt maybe. And then after that we can do C6, the left arm, and C1, the right arm. Alright. C2 went on just fine. Well, let's do C6. And C1, which is going to be, this big connection point right here, all across the shoulder. Alright. Big boy is done. Let's put him on a base. And our last drudge, number 3, is done. We're going to call him Mr. Hugs. He looks like he gives really good hugs. A pain point for him, maybe figuring out the angle of the bag on the back of his neck. Yeah, we'll say that. And that's, again, a stretch. Oh, these are so nice to put together. So happy. All right, let's move on to our last and most important model in the entire game. All right, for Miss Ironsides, we'll just assemble her entire body. So that's D1, D2, D3, this flap of the coat, D4, and then finish off with D5. After that, we'll assemble the speakerphone device, grab D7, D8, D9, and then D6. Yes. Once those are all combined, then we will attach Ironsides to the speakerphone. Okay, so D1, D2 first. And before I forget, let's look at our instructions. Okay, looking at D1, D2 is just going to attach right where a left leg should be. There we go. And as you can see, it's kind of an awkward pose, but she is stepping on the speakerphone device, and she's supposed to fit on a 30mm base, so it looks just a little strange. Anyways, next will be D3, the head and chest and right arm, which is going to be this big connection point right here. Okay, there is our head and chest. Now we'll do our coat flap, D4, which will go right along here. You can sort of see a notch where it'll definitely connect. These are always slightly awkward because any wrong pressure will get them to pop out of place, but just fiddle with it gently until you can barely see the seam. We can call it good. Now let's move on to D5, which is microphone, papers, right hand cable thing, which will also connect to her leg, as you see right there. Okay, Toni, her body at least is done. Let's go and set her down and talk about our speakerphone device. D4 and D8 are basically the two halves of the main body. Then on one of these sides, this one right here, is where we'll attach D9, and then we'll figure out where this thing goes. Sorry, I think I may have referred to this as D6, or D4, and this is D7. So we're going to flip it over and then add D8. Here it is from the same angle, but if we turn it over, there's more stuff on this side now. Also, a nice seam to check here. Now we can do D9, which is going to go across there. Okay, all we have left now is our little speakerphones, which are going to go back here. This is our connection point. Looks ever so slightly weird. And then it will connect to here on the back side of the horns. You can see that's kind of flat, whereas there's less of a nice connection point on this side. Just getting a pokey stick to smoosh that down is all good. So Ironsides will be standing next to it, and then you see this tiny connection point for her shoe, for the leg that she's holding up, the one we attach. So let's attach this to the base first. We'll make sure this sits fairly far up on the base. You don't want to accidentally have Toni like sitting on, having her foot on the side, kind of messing the entire pose up. So as I said before, the left foot will be right here. There's a notch in the shoe. I'll show you in a sec, but the microphone is going to connect in here. I don't see a specific connection point for it, but it's tucked inside and pretty flat, so I'm not too worried about that. As far as the notch on the shoe, let's see that right there. That's our connection point. It's not too big, but she'll also be standing in the ground with this foot. All right, there we go. All done. Toni Ironsides Union President is done. The most difficult part for her was that flap on the coat and getting her pose correct in the last step, where you're attaching Toni and her microphone to the device she's standing on. Overall, technically the most difficult just on amount of bits, but most difficult in this box isn't saying much. Let's look at the whole thing. The Down to Business box is done, containing Anya Lycarayen, Real Magnate, 3 Drudges, and Toni Ironsides Union President. For the love of God, focus camera. Alright, so the hardest part for this box was very much easy to identify. It is Anya's frickin' hands and fingers and Toni's weird relationship she has with this box thing she's standing on. But that is it for difficulty. It's very nice and easy compared to a lot of the boxes in the game. Of course, it's a more modern box, so I should expect that to be the case, but that's all I gotta say about them. I certainly hope you're bringing them the Drudges with Toni and not Anya, because you better not be a scab. Right, I have been your foreman, Doug the Scoundrels, helping you build a better Malifaux. Union strong.